there's a relationship between wanting something, working really hard, and doing something someone will pay you for. So that's the formula. 10,000 clients that give you a 5 out of 10 is not helpful. 1,000 clients that give you a 9.8 launches a business. Early on, you don't need quantity, you need quality. The first rookie mistake is being blinded by your own brilliance.
Jeff Hoffman.
Jeff Hoffman.
Jeff Hoffman.
An iconic, highly accomplished entrepreneur with multiple successful startups, including the founding of Booking, Priceline, and Ubit.com, executive producer of Grammy-winning jazz album and an Emmy Award-winning television show.
What is it that the world's most successful people are doing that everybody else isn't? And it turns out that there are habits and disciplines that successful people do everywhere. Pitbull's a singer, Mark's an engineer, but they have similar attitudes, habits, and practices. So one of those is, and that was the common element when I saw these successful people.
Good morning, good afternoon, good night, Club del 1% community. We have a special guest, iconic. We're making history right now in this podcast. We're bringing international business people, experts, professionals, and in this case, it's very special. I'm even a little nervous, but yeah, we have Jeff Hoffman. I'm going to introduce yourself. You're an iconic, highly accomplished entrepreneur with multiple successful startups or companies, huge companies now to your credit, including the founding of Booking, Priceline, and Ubit.com. You have an extensive experience as CEO, motivational speaker, author, film producer, executive producer of Grammy-winning jazz album and an Emmy Award-winning television show. When I was reading this, I compared to you with my colleagues with Leonardo da Vinci because you look at your biography and you excel in different singularities. So we're going to dive into that.
Thank you.
Currently, Jeff serves as the board of various companies across the globe, including the Global Entrepreneurship Network. He is recognized business expert and has received numerous awards for his contribution to entrepreneurship. So it's quite weird to have such an iconic person like yourself here in Spain. It's a pleasure for our audience to have you, and thank you very much for making it happen.
Thank you for inviting me, and we came at perfect weather in Madrid. So
yeah. Hope you
good time to be in Spain.
Hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Madrid. So, Jeff, I wanted to jump in, and how did you start? Like going back the
Sure.
furthest, were you kind of lemonade stand entrepreneur?
Almost. So I will tell you, because I grew up in the United States in the Arizona desert, but I had a single mom who had 4 kids and 3 jobs, right? Never had any money. So as a kid, I never knew the word entrepreneur or anything. What it was like, for example, I played every sport. And when the season changes and the sport changes from basketball to football, you need different shoes and equipment. But I didn't want to ask my mother, who didn't have money. So what I would do was find a way to make money. I literally remember one time as a child, I walked to somebody's house, knocked on their door, and he said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Your garage is embarrassing." And he said, "What?" And I said, "Your garage, it's a mess. You never clean it. It's embarrassing." And he said, "You knocked on my door to tell me my house is embarrassing?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "You ever going to clean it?" And then his wife came to the door. She said, "Who is that? Isn't that the kid from down the street?" I said, "Yes." She said, "What do you want?" And I said, "You guys never clean your garage." And she says to her husband, "You need to clean it already." And he said, "It's too hot out." I said, "I'll do it for $20. So that's always, I was trying to make money so I didn't have to ask my mother. And then I started to realize that entrepreneurship, never heard the word, but there's a relationship between wanting something, working really hard, and doing something someone will pay you for. So that's the formula, but I learned it young.
Wow. And just to actually jump into the analogy I made with Leonardo da Vinci and yourself, which it's amazing. How do you manage, like you just said that you played every sport. Is this something that has accompanied you in your more or less DNA to wanting to excel in difference, and why, or what motivates you?
Yes, but there's a really important, well, I think there's a couple factors. One is probably a little bit of ADD, I guess, right? I can't just do one thing for too long because then I start to get bored. But more, that's the negative. The positive side is, and this is what I always encourage people to be, especially entrepreneurs. My favorite entrepreneurs are lifelong learners. They're curious, right? And so I have a TED Talk out there, and it's called The Power of Childlike Wonder, right? 5-year-olds try to ask you a million questions. Why do we have to go to the store? Why do we need food? Why do we have to eat? Why will we die if we don't eat? 5-year-olds never stop asking you questions. My favorite adults and the most successful entrepreneurs are the ones that don't lose that childlike curiosity. How does that work? And so that, I think, for me was the driver. I always wondered about everything. And instead of wondering, why don't you just go try? I'll go try this new thing. So all along, I always wondered about music, the process of creating a song, the process of making a movie, the process of creating a television show, in addition to creating products as an entrepreneur. So having a space to let your curiosity drive you and try stuff, right? The worst thing in life is not failing. The worst thing in life is in not trying, because then you spend your whole life wondering if that would have worked. So I've always been curious. I've always liked learning, and I've always said, I'm just going to go find out how that works. And a lot of my favorite sort of business role models that became friends, like Steve Wozniak from Apple, right? Oh. I notice Woz is always saying, I wonder how everything he sees, he's wondering about it. Another friend of mine, Nolan Bushnell, he's the inventor of video games, right? Atari was his company. Nolan and I were sitting we were doing media after we both spoke at something, and we were sitting in someone's office waiting for the cameras to come. And all of a sudden I looked down and he took apart something on this person's desk. I said, Nolan, what are you doing? I said, this is not your office. And he said, I'm trying to figure out how this thing works. I said, okay, but you took apart a machine on someone else's desk. His curiosity drives him. So that's been my thing. I want to learn something new. I want to see how things work. I want to take stuff apart. And I was just never afraid to fail at it.
That's great. I listened to you in a podcast where you said tools or things you use to keep that curiosity alive, which was perhaps doing a sentence. Can you share a little bit of how to keep curiosity?
Sure, Roy. And that comes from emulating. So many years ago, I got this question. What is it that the world's most successful people are doing that everybody else isn't? Why are some people really successful, right? And I started wondering, there must be doing something that everybody else isn't doing, right? That's what I started to wonder. So I made it kind of a lifelong study. Every time I'm around somebody that I admire that's been successful, at whatever they do, by the way, I started to ask the same set of questions to understand. And it turns out that there are habits and disciplines, practices that successful people do everywhere. And that's when I started to notice that, for example, I mentioned somebody like Steve Wozniak or Mark Randolph, who I'll be with tomorrow, that invented Netflix. But then friends of mine like Pitbull, the singer, is a friend of mine. They're similar in ways you'd never guess, right? Pitbull's a singer, Mark's an engineer, but they have similar attitudes, habits, and practices. So one of those is that these people are trying to absorb information from a world broader than their own, right? And so to answer your question, the habit is I just made up this word. I call it info sponging. But I challenge myself, like, for example, the first time Pitbull called me, I was like, okay, you're Mr. Worldwide. Why are you calling me? And he said, because I want to learn business now, right? And he said, all my friends are in music. You're in business. Teach me business. And I thought, that's pretty smart that he's wants to continue to grow his lifelong learning. The most successful people don't just study in their field. They look to see what everyone else is doing. So really quick, info sponging, the idea that I created was every day, I'm going to challenge myself to learn one new thing every day. But here's the important thing that I don't need to know. So for 10 minutes every day, this is what I'll challenge your listeners. For 10 minutes every day, and I usually do this first thing in the morning, 15 minutes. If you can't do it every day, do it once a week. I go out to learn one thing that is not in my industry. So if you were in travel, so for these 10 minutes, you're not in travel and you don't work for your company, go read one article, watch one video, talk to one person. And at the end, I write down one sentence of what I learned today. But when I write it down, I'm like, I have no idea what that even means, right? Today. But I want you to think of knowledge like puzzle pieces. If I gave you a piece of a puzzle and I said, Jorge, what is this? You'd say, you gave me one piece, Jeff. If I gave you 2 or 3, you wouldn't know. But if every day I kept giving you pieces out of the box of the puzzle and you moved them around the table, one day you would call me, right? And you would say, oh, this is a cathedral. That's what it's going to be. You would see the pattern forming. That's what the most successful people do with knowledge. They collect bits of knowledge and they push it around the table and they, oh, I see a trend coming that no one else sees. So info sponging, learn one new thing a day that you don't need to know. Write down one sentence of what you learned, and then some days just stare at that list, and you will start to see patterns before anyone else sees them.
Yeah, when you see patterns, is that you more or less, like the saying, connect the dots, and then
Absolutely.
those pieces of information, okay, they're relevant in the near future.
You connect the dots and you apply them in a way that before anyone else saw it. And that was the common element when I saw these successful people. I was like, how'd you get there? And I realized something, because they were studying the world and connecting the dots before anyone else connected them.
Wow. So and you yourself are iconic in entrepreneurial ecosystem history. What would be the best advice you've ever got and the worst advice you've ever got?
Sure. So I'll go with the best.
Okay.
Well, the worst, I don't know if it was advice so much as my own. I'll do the worst first, so we'll close on the positive note. The worst was people telling me, that's a great idea, go for it. Okay, and I'll tell you why that was the worst advice. Because they were giving me their opinion and validating mine. And I have this board where I write down the lessons that I've learned. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you the lesson from that, of it being wrong. One day I wrote down, we get our advice from proximity, not relevance. And the reason I said that is I was listening, I was getting advice from people whose only qualification is they're near me. It could be husband, wife, mother, father, brother, sister, your best friend. So the people around me were telling me that's a good idea or that's a bad idea. And I was getting advice from them because they were the people around me. And then one day I realized, wait a minute, somebody, actually it was my mom. My mother was commenting on some internet idea I was telling her about. And my mom was saying why she didn't think it was a good idea. And all of a sudden, I thought to myself, so that actually was bad advice. She was saying, don't do it, it's a bad idea. But what I realized was, I said, Mom, you're telling me that because of all the internet companies you built? My mom's like, I never built an internet company. I'm like, exactly. And then I realized, Jeff, it's your fault. Why are you listening to the wrong people? So advice from people who are not relevant to your market. If you're building a travel product, don't listen to your best friend unless she is a person that travels all the time and knows a lot about travel. That was the bad advice. The best advice was when I had a mentor that told me, it's never about you. It might be your idea, and you might be the founder, but the only path to success is through building a team of people smarter than you around you. So I originally thought, it's my idea. I'm the founder. I'm the creator. No one can do it better than me, whatever, all that crap. And the truth is, one day somebody said, you will never get anywhere until you surround yourself with people smarter than you. So that's the best advice I ever got, was stop trying to build a company and spend more time building a team. They'll build the company.
Totally. But wonderful. You mentioned advices, and then you referred to the word even in the second question, mentor. So what importance do you give? I know you yourself are a mentor of great entrepreneurs. What importance and how do you see mentorship in
Sure.
general?
That's a great question. And I wish someone had told me that.
And
right?
Can you still be mentored when you're in your level, let's say?
Okay. So absolutely. You never stop learning. In fact, if you think you're done learning, you're already irrelevant. You're over. You never, ever stop learning, and you can always be mentored, because there's still something you don't know how to do, you've never done, and somebody's done it successfully that you can learn from. So I think a mentor is critically important. The mistake that I made early on, first of all, I didn't have any mentors early. Then later, I thought a mentor was somebody that's just the only qualification I thought was they've done this. So I was building travel technology for travel and hospitality, right? That's what we did at Priceline, Booking, et cetera. That's what those companies do. I was building technology for travel. So for a mentor, I thought I just needed someone, maybe they worked for an airline or a hotel company. The lesson that I learned about picking a mentor is the best mentor is someone you want to be like when you grow up. So that's a holistic view. The person, when you look at somebody, not say he used to be the CEO of an airline, that's not the qualification for a mentor. When you look at somebody and say, man, someday I want to be just like him, that's who you pick. Because entrepreneurship, as we all know, is a difficult journey. It's a lonely journey, right? There's a lot of risk involved. You alienate people that, are around you. If you're going to do all that stuff, it better be taking you somewhere you want to be. So when you pick a mentor that you say, I want to wind up where she is someday, that's how you select your mentor. Find someone you want to be like someday. I don't care how old you are. Somebody you want to be like when you grow up, and reach out to that person to be your mentor. They may have no knowledge of the industry you're in, but they have knowledge of how to make you an effective leader, a better communicator, a good person, lead a good life. All that stuff's way more important than did they work for an airline.
How do you contact mentors? I know there's a story. I really like the pretty girl high school story. I don't know if you... So how can young entrepreneurs get in contact?
Sure. I'm glad you said that. Well, I'll explain. I'll explain what that story is. And that is part of the quote that I said, get your advice don't get your advice from proximity, get it from relevance. But I thought of that one day because I was sitting in a football stadium, American football. But I started to wonder this afterwards. So I'm sitting in this football stadium in one little town. And on the team in American football, the head person's the quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. And the quarterback is playing well. And everybody around me is saying he's going to go pro. He's going to be a professional football player. And then they have dancers and cheerleaders. And one girl's, by definition, there's always a prettiest girl at that event. And everyone's saying she's going to be a famous movie star. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, and then I went and looked it up. Right now, on a Friday night in the United States, there are 17,000 high schools. So that means divided by 2, right? There's like 9,000 games going on any Friday night. So in 9,000 stadiums, someone's the prettiest girl and someone's the best athlete. And all the people are saying he's going to be pro and she's going to be a movie star. And yet none of those people have any qualification to say that. I'm like, do you own a professional football team? Are you a scout? No. So how do you know they're going to make it? In the same way, that girl, none of these people are a talent agent, right? In Hollywood. That's when I started to think about a mentor, right? And I need somebody that's had the career path that I want to have, that's been around that. If I want advice on playing football, I want advice from someone who played football professionally. So anyway, the mentor, I mean, you personally, Jorge, are a LinkedIn genius. You know how to use it. You know how to work it. You've created so much value and following. You use LinkedIn really well. I know that people learn from you, and people that are listening, if you don't know that, they should learn from you the way you do LinkedIn. But that's by far the best tool out there. People are on LinkedIn because they want to do business and they want to be contacted. So going through LinkedIn, reading about people, and finding someone that you say, man, I want to be like that person one day, that's how you find your mentor. Go out and reach out. Cold reach and tell people, I really admire you and I would love to talk to you someday. Most people won't respond. Somebody will.
What are the key qualities you would envision into that figure of great leader or mentor? For you personally, what are the qualities that every successful or admiring has?
There's a few. The first one, the biggest one, is humility. When people think they know everything and they're smarter than everyone, you can't learn from them, and they stop learning. So the first one is humility, right? I like working with people that say, they might have been immensely successful, right? But they're still saying, can you teach me something? Can I grow more? Can I learn more? So humility, pay attention to that. If we were listening to a speaker earlier today, I will not mention the name, that came across like he already knows everything and he's already smarter than everyone. And you know what happens to me? I just tune that out. I'm already not interested in listening. Somebody with the humility to know that you never stop growing and you never stop learning, and I don't know everything. That's a big characteristic. So you want your mentor to be open-minded too, not the one, because some people think I need to find a mentor that already knows everything. Nobody does, right? The second one I would say is empathy, is people with listening skills. And by the way, I didn't know that till I failed. One of the companies I launched, we were trying to sell products to stay-at-home moms, to housewives at the time. Neither me nor none of my employees were stay-at-home moms. None of them were housewives. And we launched a product and no mom at all liked the product. And later, we launched an early internet company. It was I won't say the name of it. I don't want to embarrass the other people. But we thought that instead of going to the mall, a mom, instead of packing up all the kids, could use her computer to order something on this brand new thing called the internet. And here's what happened in real life. No one bought anything. The company failed. And I had to tell the investors and the employees, I have to let you all go home. We're done with this shopping company. But I reached out to some of the people because you could see them on the website. So this is a true story, Jorge. This one mom replied, and I said, I saw you looking at my products, but you didn't buy anything. And I said, why not? I said, the company failed. And this is where the empathy, the listening skills came in, and she said to me, she said, well, your products are good. I wanted to buy this sweater, but I'm not going to type my credit card into your computer. So this is what she said. So you and your nerd friends can buy more computers. I said, okay, ma'am, that's fine, but we can't see your credit card. She said, of course you can. I'm typing it on your website. And I said, no, we use something called RSA 128-bit encryption. And this woman said, sorry, man, I only speak English. And I said, I'm speaking English. And she said, I don't know what that is. And I said, you don't know what encryption is? Because all my friends and everybody I know what it means to encrypt something. And she said, I said, you don't know what encryption is? And this woman said to me, unless that's the way Egyptians bury their dead, then I don't know what encryption is. And I said, no, that's not it. And so I went back. She goes, and I don't have any idea what you're talking about. And I realized I'm a bad listener. I'm telling people what to do, but I'm not listening. So empathy, how well do you listen to the world around you? What I started doing on that, when I was the CEO, I would tell people, I'm going on a listening tour. I'm going to go talk to 50 or 100 moms. And if they don't even know what encryption is, I got a problem. And I need to figure out how to solve it.
That's crazy. And in parentheses, I think this is real life case scenario. I came here sweating, all nervous, and you started asking me questions about myself when I'm like trying to gather your information. So it's just like the constant curiosity, humility. Like it's you truly have it in you.
Well, thank you very much.
I really appreciate.
Those are the things I've learned along the way.
That's great. Well, before I wanted also to talk a little bit more about, matter of fact, I want to talk about the import. You mentioned lots of key figures like Nolan from Atari, Steve Bosniak, Mark Randolph, like friends of yours who also changed the world like yourself. What importance do you give to networking? And what importance do you give to like, for example, Silicon Valley has something special that's going on where lots of founders that you even mentioned come from that Bay Area. So do you find it important also that location where you're
Okay, those are great questions. No, location doesn't matter anymore. And it turns out it never did. But the reason it worked for Silicon Valley, because they had an ecosystem that no one else had. It turns out you can build that I'll explain. You can build that ecosystem anywhere. They didn't own it, but no one else was doing it. So that ecosystem has a couple of elements in it that are answer your question. And so the short answer is networking is critically important. But here's why. Every problem you're trying to solve in business, someone probably has already done that. Someone knows something you don't. Somebody could help you. So if you're sitting in your office alone or with 3 people trying to solve problems, and meanwhile, someone's already done that one, right? But why would they help you? Right? You say to yourself, well, why would they tell me how to do that and help me? The answer is because you probably have done something they're struggling with. So what Silicon Valley did, it wasn't the location. They created something that people didn't realize. They socialized business. Here's something interesting. If you go into a restaurant in Silicon Valley, back in the day especially, you and I would come in. You and I are about to have a meeting. It's just the 2 of us. And I'd say table for 2. They'd put us at a table with 8 other people. A table for 10. And the first time I said, it's just 2 of us. And they're like, you're right, you're sitting here. And I'm like, there's all these other people at the table. And in Silicon Valley, you're like, that's right, because we all want to hear each other's ideas. So they socialize business. In Silicon Valley, even the restaurants, you all sit together, everybody talks, and you say, wait a minute, you have that problem? I can fix that. And then you say to me, okay, what can I do for you? And I say, well, I don't know how to do this. And you say, I know him, he can do that. Oh. And then he says, well, if she'll help me with this, that's what worked. They understood the attitude was that a rising tide lifts all boats. Everybody else didn't get that. So the network effect of meeting all these people and sharing and helping each other, in Silicon Valley, it was everybody's goal for everybody to win. And that's what made it work because people interact so much there. I literally did something, one of the times I was there, everybody wanted to meet with me and I didn't have any time left. And so I met as many as I could. But the last meal, all I had left was a dinner, and there were 5 different entrepreneurs or startups that wanted to meet. So I sent a note to all 5 of them, the same note. I said, I only have 1 time slot left. It's dinner. You can all have it. And all 5 of them, without hesitation, came to the same dinner, and they're all at the same. I did get a table for 10.
Makes sense.
And they're all like sharing with each other and saying, I can help you with that. The network is critically important for being able to help you at times where you're stuck on something and you need to learn something.
Totally. Now, talking on the concept of ambition. So you've had on your name, you founded companies that literally have changed the world and are global, no? When you started those ventures, what was that motivated you? Is it still the same thing that keeps on motivating you to keep doing things, which we'll touch later? And how was your ambition? Like, was it I want to change the world, or how do you
So
see?
yeah, you're right. Impact matters, right? Part of the way I attracted talent in early days, why it was by saying, wouldn't you like to look at an industry one day and it's completely different because of your work, the things that you did? We created so one of the things I was building way before there was a Priceline.com or Expedia or Booking or any of those things was these check-in kiosks that are in the airports when you go and you check in. I was telling the team then, wouldn't you like to walk into an airport and no one's in line anymore? They're just walking up to kiosk and checking in and you can nod and say, you're welcome, right? Because you build, I still get people from us building the early ones that will take a picture of themselves at a kiosk with a boarding pass and they'll just text me thanks because we helped pioneer that. So when we were doing that, we've always talked about impact. You really want to look back at your life and say, I helped make something better somewhere. Impact is a big deal. And the rock stars in an industry, they don't want just a paycheck. They want to look back and know they've made an impact. So that does matter. It's a win for everybody, and impact still matters to me to be able to look back and say, did we do anything that mattered? Did we make something better for somebody else?
How do you see present generations, young generations of entrepreneurs in Globo in general, and with that you just referred us seeking more impact, or is it what motivates us, or how do you envision that?
What I'm really excited about with this generation is the focus on two things: impact and experiences. That my generation, it was title and salary. Oh, wait, you're a vice president? That makes you great, right? And what's your salary? Your generation, there's a focus much more on, am I having any impact? Am I making any difference in the world? But you also care about experiences, right? This generation wants to grow. They want to learn. They don't just want a job, right? They actually want an experience in addition. And I think that is phenomenal. We did this crazy experiment. So I'm part of a couple of nonprofits, and we can touch on that later if we have time. But one of them is called the Unreasonable Group. And we were trying to kind of prove a point that the entrepreneurial spirit are people that want to have an impact and want to make things better. So we actually chartered a ship that sailed around the world full of entrepreneurs, showing entrepreneurs the way the world's real problems and challenging them to fix it. And it was a success, meaning we proved the point that people like you that said, whoa, I didn't know that was a problem, saw the problem and said, I'm going to design a solution and I'm going to make it better. Impact matters.
Totally. I want to go back a little on for those young entrepreneurs that are starting their ventures. What would be some, not advice, but what would be the rookie mistakes that most entrepreneurs make, and how can they avoid them?
I obviously work with thousands of startups all over the world now, so I see them all and I hear them all and I lived them all. We made every mistake you can make 3 times myself along the way. The first rookie mistake is being blinded by your own brilliance. You think it's a great idea, who cares? Because you're expecting the stay-at-home mom to buy it and she has no idea what you're talking about. So that's the first one. I hear these people like, I got this great idea. And I'm thinking, who thinks it's great? You do, your mom does, right? Your brother does. Who thinks it's great? And then when I say, who are you going to sell it to? And they'll say, I'll make up an example, schools. And I'm like, okay, can you go get me some school administrators to tell me it's great? And they're like, well, they haven't seen it yet. And I said, but you haven't even talked to them? Being blinded by your own brilliance is the first mistake. You're excited about your idea. People around you, remember what I said, proximity, not relevance, are telling you it's a good idea, and not one of them is the person you expect to buy this. So stop listening to your opinion and go talk to that mom or that school administrator that you want. Probably a second rookie mistake we touched on a little bit is believing that you can wear 7 hats. Because at the beginning, you have to. You're paying the bills, you're doing the marketing, you're building the product, you're answering the phone. So all of a sudden, you're good at customer service, finance, marketing, operations. No, you're not. You're actually only good at one thing. So figuring out the one thing you have a strength in and then getting out of the way and letting other people do the other things, that's the mistake. People say, they say, look, man, I wear 6 hats and it's going well. And I was like, okay, that's bad news, right? The fact that it's going well is actually a problem because you think you're good at stuff that you're actually not. Those are rookie mistakes people make. And in the end, that whole product market fit thing, right? Going and talking to those moms before you build them a product ensures product, but I don't see that. People build a product, then the mistake I made, they take it out and say, how come no moms like this? And the mom's like, if you had told me you were building that, I would have told you not to waste your time. I was like, I wish I talked to you first.
What would be the key ingredients now to build a global brand and also like to get those perhaps 1,000 clients?
Right.
Does it change or are they different?
It does change, yeah.
Okay.
Early on, I'll answer those separately. Early on, to get those early clients, you've got to do something special for them, right? You don't treat your initial clients. We always call them reference clients. And the reason why is they're the ones everyone's going to go to for a reference. It's a social media world. So in the beginning, you don't need lots of clients. That's another mistake companies make. They're like, we need 10,000 clients. I said, no, you need 1,000 clients. 10,000 clients that give you a 5 out of 10 net promoter score, right, is not helpful. 1,000 clients that give you a 9.8 launches a business. That's a mistake. They focus on quantity of clients early on. Early on, you don't need quantity, you need quality. You need 9.8 out of 10 because it's a social media world and everybody's going to go out there and kind of look. So that's part of the brand is you need virality, right? We live in this social media world where people don't say, they don't look at your ad and say, I have to buy this product. They call their friends and say, what product do you use? And they look at social media and they say, man, all my friends love this. I'm going to do that. So in that validating world, your brand has to be this viral thing that happens because the people that first encounter you can't stop talking about you and absolutely love you. And the other part of brand is that brands need to be simple and resonant, right? Don't tell a complicated story. Tell a really simple story. All the best brands were just really simple message of why do I care about you? What do you do for me? What is the simple message? I learned that, by the way, from Fred Smith, the founder of FedEx.
Okay.
Because I had a chance to spend some time with him. And his brand was this at the beginning. It said, when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. That's all he said. He didn't talk about the cost or the convenience of finding a FedEx. All he said was, if you absolutely need this package delivered overnight, call me. Super simple. His brand resonated because it wasn't complicated. Simple wins.
Wow, that's crazy. Talking about hats, I wanted to ask, how do you balance your role as CEO, film producer, author, entrepreneur, motivational speaker? How do you balance this hats?
All right, so I'm glad you asked that because that's another hard-learned lesson. And the answer is, and part of this I learned from Richard Branson at Virgin. And because I asked Richard that once, you have all these companies, and he turned to me and he said, not at once. And so all those things that I've done were I'm not a parallel entrepreneur. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Okay. Each of those things, when I was doing the music stuff, there was a point when we were building the first travel company where if you had called me and said, hey, I want to show you this idea, you know what I would have said? If you don't have an idea to help us get more heads on pillows in hotel rooms, call me next year. Then later I was doing music. And if you had called me, I would have said, if you don't have an idea for selling out Friday night's concert, call me next year or whatever it was you're working on. So the answer is one thing at a time. The good news about that, Jorge, is that when you fail fast because you're not trying to do 5 things. You're all in on this one thing. So it's important. Each of those things I did were serial, not parallel. I finished one thing before I started. I never tried to run 2 or 3 companies at once.
And you recommend that to young entrepreneurs who have, because it's very typical in my generation speaking, that we have lots going on very parallel. What would be your advice to those like me?
Okay, so there's a question first, which is what's your end goal? And you know, in the entrepreneurial world, there's sort of these 2 terms behind the scenes, more on the investor side. We label these things a lifestyle business or growth business. A lifestyle business, if you want to make €500,000 a year and live a great life, then you can have 4 businesses and 4 projects. That's a lifestyle. But if you want to build the next Amazon, Booking, Netflix, Waze, if your goal is to build something big and global, every one of those people only did one thing. None of them had multiple projects. So by the way, I studied that. right? Because way back in the early internet days, I used to talk to Bezos a lot because there was like 3 groups building companies. Jeff and Pierre were building eBay. We were launching Priceline, and the other Jeff was building Amazon at the time. So we used to talk a lot, and I learned a lesson. He kept saying, right now, people forget this, for years on Amazon, you could only buy a book. And what Jeff told me back then is, one day I'm going to sell a lot of stuff, but right now I want to be this is what he literally said, best damn bookseller on the planet. And then I ran into another friend, Tony Shea. His company was Zappos. Did you know what Zappos?
Yeah.
And Tony said, one day I'm going to do other things, but right now I have to be the best darn shoe seller on the planet. So our focus was, let's just be the best darn something. Today, as an example, Booking.com is the world's largest, it's Priceline and Booking are all one company. The world's largest seller of hotel rooms, but it really only has one product. Really, all the company sells is hotel rooms, and it's the world's largest. Bezos now sells everything on Amazon, but not until he was the best at something. So then I started looking at all these companies, right? The ones I said, just pick those. The Apple story, the Netflix story, pick a story. The people that achieved the highest levels did not have multiple projects. They picked one, and they were all in on the one thing they knew they could do best.
And Jeff, how would you define your philosophy in life or North Star purpose? What's yours?
I think that if you don't have a North Star, if you don't have a purpose, a bigger reason for doing this. So I'm going to tell a story specifically about my daughter, who is in the studio with us today, because there was a time where I was just gone a lot, working really hard. And when you do that, there's sacrifice to family members, right? And you know, you have a daughter saying, man, you're gone a lot, right? And so one of the times I was the chairman of a charity that provided physical activity, sports for disabled children, but for the most disabled children. You can't play wheelchair basketball if you're blind or you have no arms, right? So we created a league of sports for children that could not participate in anything else. But it's a nonprofit, it's a charity. And I was doing this with a friend of mine who was an athlete. And one of the times I'm working really hard at work, which means there's a sacrifice to yourself personally and to your family. But I took her, we were doing a softball game, and I took my daughter out there, and we're pushing these kids around. Like when they, quote, hit the ball in softball, then someone has to push them down to the base, and we're pushing these kids around in the sun, having an absolutely great time. And parents were thanking me. And they weren't just thanking me for the league, but some of them were saying thanks, and they were going by in these brand new wheelchairs. And my daughter said, why does everybody thank you? And I was saying, well, because we created this league and I'm the chairman of it. And we created this opportunity. And she's like, what are they mentioning the wheelchairs? And I said, because my partner in this, it was a boxer named Evander Holyfield. Evander and I were doing this together. I said, because Evander and I bought all these wheelchairs. And my daughter, who was helping push people that day, stopped and said, wait a minute, you guys paid for all this and you bought all these wheelchairs and you created all this? I said, yes. And she said, is that why you work this hard? And I said, absolutely. Because if I don't work hard and run a good business and make money, these kids don't have wheelchairs. And she just looked at me different then and said, you know, her attitude was more, let me know how I can help, right? She came to the office a lot of times. Instead of, why are you doing this? She was like, now that makes sense. If you don't have a North Star or reason, then you're just working hard and wasting your life and paying sacrifice. We were doing it because we wanted to leave an impact and do bigger things. And it was just cool the day my daughter said, this is why you're working this hard. Yeah, that's my North Star, is at the end, I don't want people to remember the businesses. I want people to remember the lives we made better. That's why we do Gen, right? Totally. We just want to make other people's lives better, but you have to work hard to do that.
Totally. Well, my next question was specifically that. What inspired you to start World Jaws Horizon and Reasonable Group, all these philanthropies? I don't know if you want to add something more to
Sure.
to
Just to kind of summarize that, it was that entrepreneurship isn't a job, it's a mindset and a tool set, right? A skill set. And it was because I chose to be an entrepreneur and not follow, I started in a corporate engineering job. It's because I chose to be an entrepreneur that gave me the opportunity to create value that we got paid for, that enabled us to create these nonprofits. If we didn't create value in the world, right, and we didn't get paid for it, we don't have the money to buy the wheelchairs or anything else. So the businesses were I always tell people, success is not a destination, even though everyone thinks it is. Success is a platform. If you work hard and you have a successful business, then you have a business that can actually go out and buy wheelchairs, a business that can go out in the Priceline days. We did a lot of charity. Priceline sponsored a lot of charities. We were making internet money, and we were using it to make other people's lives better. And I realized that the harder I work, the more of a difference I can make. And that's what the inspiration was.
Crazy how your DNA extrapolated to the business's DNA. It's amazing. Yes, we're ending now. I have a couple of questions and then some quick questions also.
Okay, sure.
So in broad terms, what would be that one advice you would give young Spanish entrepreneurs who are listening to you?
The biggest advice I'd give you is when you have a good idea, get out of your office, go out into the world and show it to the people that you think are going to buy that product or service. Spend more time out of your office talking to people. And too many people spend too much time working in their office and on their whiteboard and not enough time validating their ideas for product market fit in the world.
Totally. What would be that one advice you would give to a child? If you could give only one advice to a child?
Oh, no, I absolutely. And that one is to never stop being curious. Wonder about everything. Go pick up a shiny object instead of walking by it and wondering, I wonder what that is. Just turn around and go pick it up and see. So never stop wondering and never stop being curious.
That's great. Yes, for context also, what's next for Jeff Hoffman? What are you doing? What are your ventures? I know you're here in Madrid, South Summit as a headliner. But apart from that, if you could tell our...
Really, the focus now is on teaching people how to help themselves. So the not business part of my life is, again, serving as chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network. We're on the ground in 200 countries now, and we're teaching people how to get a better life by turning their idea into a money-making business. So it's not about money or business. It's about, you don't like the life you have, go create the one you want. And the question is, how do I do that? And the answer is through the skill set of entrepreneurship. So we teach people how to turn an idea into a business. That's the Global Entrepreneurship Network. The one I mentioned before that I was the founding board member of, I'm still a partner in, is called the Unreasonable Group. It's named after a George Bernard Shaw quote about the fact that all progress is dependent upon unreasonable people, right, that are crazy enough to think they can change the world. That one is similar, but Unreasonable focuses only on social good. We're aligned with the United Nations 17 SDGs, the goals. And then the last one, World Youth Horizons, is the youth foundation I set up. And that one's focused on, I was born a white male in the United States. So I'm already way ahead of people through no design of my own. I just was born there. But I was in a village in Africa one day talking to this brilliant young man and thinking, why is he born in a village in Africa and I'm born in the United States as a white male? It's not really fair. He's as smart as I am. He's probably smarter. But I was born here and he was born somewhere else. So the focus of World Youth is we're trying to create pathways for children who don't have a shot at a better life to have a path to a better life. That's what we do at World Youth. So those are the things that are most important to me now.
Truly amazing and inspiring. Thank you, Jeff, for adding value. And also, I'll put in and plug in your social media, your websites, and so people can find your projects and yourself. So quick questions that I have. If you could have a dinner with anyone in the world, dead or alive, which is quite curious because
probably Walt Disney.
Walt Disney?
Because I wanted to comprehend the way that he took imagination and creativity and turned it into business. It's fascinating to me.
That's awesome. A book or movie or song
that
book. You would recommend?
For me, it was The Alchemist.
Nice.
Because The Alchemist actually made me think about, what do you actually want in life? Why are you doing what are you chasing? But I hadn't really thought deeply until I read The Alchemist.
What's the best investment you've made in your life and the best investment you've made for under $50 or euros?
Oh, that's a hard one. Because it wasn't quite under 50, but it's funny. I'm just going to tell you the first thing that came to mind because it wasn't a business investment.
Okay.
It was headphones. Okay. Because music actually helps me get inspired. So when I finally bought some decent headphones and put them on, the music, well, like if I'm not energized, I put on the right music and I'm ready to go to the office and do something. If something makes me sad, right, the music lifts me back up. If I need to calm down because I'm worried about something, the music calms me down. So when you said that, I'm just answering the first thing that came to my mind, headphones. And then the best investment I've ever made in my life is a pretty easy one. It's time with my children.
That's great.
That you get to keep that forever. They can take everything else away from you, but they can't take away moments and memories.
Totally. And just to end, one quote, speech, word that imagine everyone and 8 billion people are listening to you. What would be that one thing that you would?
I'll just pick one. I have a lot of quotes that I really, really like. In fact, my favorite quote machine is Mark Twain.
Okay.
Right? He had so many great quotes. But I'm gonna do something that fits kind of for this moment. Your attitude. This isn't the quote. This is what I wrote on my wall.
Okay.
Is that your attitude determines your outcome. And I started to notice that the people that believe, that have the biggest attitude, achieve the most. Right? And the people are like, that probably won't work. They're always negative and looking for a way out. So I was doing a television commercial, a public service announcement on Univision.
Okay.
And on Telemundo and stuff. But it was me and Pitbull. And we were sitting side by side. And somebody said, I was asking about attitude. And I said, you have to believe that the sky is the limit. And Pitbull sitting right next to me, he turned and looked at me and he goes, yeah, Jeff, I used to believe the sky was the limit too, but then I saw footsteps on the moon. Whoa. And I was like, thanks, man, for making me here, right? And that was it. He said, I used to think the sky was the limit until I saw footprints on the moon. And I was like, that's the attitude. I love that quote because there's always another step you could go if you just keep looking and believing.
Crazy. Let's end this like this. Thank you very much. I'm really inspired. I'm really grateful for this event, this encounter. Thank you, Jeff, for giving us these valuable lessons, secret hacks. I'll plug in your information of social media. You can find Jeff and hope to see you soon back in Madrid.